A life story about a girl, Eloise, who worked as a cleaner in one of the branches of a construction company. The work was hard, but in spite of that the girl still had time to study by correspondence. Once she found a purse in the trash, the cleaner took it to the director, and when the boss looked inside, the office was stunned. Welcome back to Tales Track. I am excited to share a new story with you. Let's get started. Eloise, trying to ignore her aching back from fatigue, began cleaning the last office room. Today has been a hectic day. First, the general cleaning of the director's office, then the HR and accounting departments. She knew well that her main fatigue wasn't from the physical work but the emotional strain. Eloise thought to herself, why is everyone so upset? Yes, she couldn't refuse hiring the candidate who wasn't liked. It wasn't her fault that the director came in, looked at the resume, winked at her, and gave the order to hire. Since then, he has greeted her every morning. But he greets everyone, doesn't he? Sure, everyone else isn't a cleaner. But what's there to be envious of? They have higher positions and better salaries. She hadn't even tried to apply to university, although she wanted to and her mother insisted. But what could she do when her mother needed money for treatment? All of Eloise's salary went to that. How would her mother get treated if she didn't work? University could wait. Black streaks don't last forever. Eloise, you're as slow as a sluggish fly. How long can you take? You still need to check the grounds the director will have important visitors tomorrow. The HR head's voice cracked like a whip. She was Eloise's main tormentor. Seeing the nasty smirk on the brightly painted lips at the mention of the director, Eloise wanted to say something back but kept silent and went to clean the area around the office. There was indeed a lot of work there. The wind had scattered leaves, pigeon feathers and lightweight, omnipresent plastic bags, but away from prying eyes and sarcastic smiles, her fatigue vanished. She worked with pleasure. In truth, she loved cleaning. Eloise had a rare and valuable trait in a world that was not always kind and welcoming. She could find and see beauty. Perhaps that's why she didn't break under the weight of her life's burdens. She finished with the lawn. All that was left was to empty the trash cans. Suddenly, as she tipped one into a plastic bag, she saw something that had no business being there. It was an expensive leather wallet, clearly belonging to someone well off. Its contents confirmed this: business cards, bank cards, money. A lot of money. Eloise wouldn't earn this much in 6 months. The first temptation was strong. She quickly calculated the cost of medicines, multiplying them by the treatment courses. Tests and examinations added to the total. But then she pulled herself together. What if it was involved in some criminal activity, or belonged to someone from the director's circle? This last thought formed a decision. The company's territory meant the company's management should handle lost items found on it. Determined, she stuffed the wallet into her work coat pocket and gathered her tools. The next morning, mustering her courage and deliberately not taking her cleaning tools to avoid suspicion, Eloise walked to the director's office, enduring the piercing and inquisitive glances. Ah. Eloise, the director, smiled broadly. Come in. What brings you here? She sighed quietly. How could the gossip stop when Lucas, so young for a director, barely 10 years older than her, smiled so brilliantly? Lucas, I found this in the trash can yesterday, near our office. She stammered slightly and placed the wallet on the table. Oh, so they're throwing money around on our premises, the director jokes, surprised, as he emptied the contents, examining the business cards and bank cards. Looks like we've got a secret millionaire in our midst. Suddenly, his joking tone vanished. The director stopped short, turning pale and freezing as he stared at one of the bank cards. He turned it over in his hands, examining it from all angles, lost in somber contemplation. What a small world, he thought. Lucy, to whom did you give your card? The one I regularly transfer money to. Ah, Lucy, to make such a blunder. I always suspected you weren't sincere, but to be foolish as well. But why did your beau lose his wallet? Or did he lose it at all? And why did it end up in the trash? Thank you. Eloise Lucas finally returned to the present. You did the right thing by bringing this to me. For your honesty and integrity, expect a bonus with your salary. With a nod, the director dismissed Eloise, who couldn't miss the hidden sadness and disappointment in his voice. The impact of her visit to the boss was felt by the end of the day. The office buzzed like a disturbed hive. Connecting her trip to the director's office and the announcement of the bonus, her colleagues came to a disheartening conclusion. Snitch now, even those who previously ignored her looked at Eloise with disdain. She eagerly awaited the end of the workday to finally go home, give in to her tears, and find solace in her favourite book, the most effective and accessible means of emotional recovery for her. Lucas couldn't focus in his office either, despite his efforts. Noticing he had read the same document 3 times without absorbing any of it, he cursed, shut his laptop, and decided to go home. I need to look her in the eyes before she goes to sleep, he thought angrily about his wife. Lucy was in the living room. Seeing her husband, she smiled and offered her cheek for a kiss, but he was in no mood for harents this time. Lucy, maybe you can explain this to me, he asked, pulling his wife's bank card from his jacket pocket. I'm waiting for an explanation. Lucy blushed but quickly composed herself. What? It's my card. It was stolen recently. I didn't have a chance to tell you. Oh, stolen, Lucas drawled mockingly. But you didn't block it, as one should in case of theft or loss. It's active and I even topped it up recently. By the way, can you also explain which thief would put it in a wallet with money and then throw it in a trash can? Any ideas? Stop throwing stupid riddles at me, cornered. Lucy decided that the best defence was indeed a good offence. Why are you messing with my head? What money? What wallet? I lost it, and that's all I know. Her voice grew increasingly hysterical. Seeing the conversation was going nowhere, Lucas stormed out, slamming the door, and went to his study. Georgie, he dialed an old friend's number. I need a favour. Remember that private detective you mentioned? Can you give me his number? This time it's really important. The detective turned out to be just what was needed. Within a couple of days, Lucas already had compromising photos of his wife kissing some smooth-looking guy. Lucas examined the rather compromising photos with poorly concealed disgust. So Lucy likes sugary men, he thought, his blood pounding in his head and echoing in his ears. Gigolos and playboys. You sunk low, my dear. Everything handed to you on a silver platter, first from your parents, then from me. No wonder you've gone mad with luxury. His fists clenched involuntarily, seeking something to hit. But the target was far away, so the water pitcher on his desk bore the brunt of his anger. With a powerful swipe, it crashed to the floor, shattering into hundreds of dull shards in a spreading puddle. The drive home felt endless. Lucas struggled to suppress the fierce urge to speed down the empty road. Calm down, Lucas, calm down, he told himself. That's exactly what they want. There's a lot of money left after you. So slow down. Your money can still serve a better purpose. He didn't have the strength to talk to his wife, who was, as usual, sitting in the living room. He tossed the leather folder onto the sofa and silently spread the photos in front of Lucy. Then he reclined in his chair, observing her reaction. He had regained his composure, though his tense jaw and slight flush revealed traces of his recent anger. Lucy stared at him in confusion, and hearing no explanation, carelessly picked up one of the photos. Her lower lip pouted slightly, giving her face a playful and somewhat petulant expression. Why did I always like that? Lucas wondered, sitting across from her. Was I blind? She's a selfish, spoiled, and utterly shameless woman, incapable of feeling love or even basic gratitude for her comfortable and easy life. Where were my eyes when I married her? As is often the case in such situations, there was no answer to his rhetorical question. Meanwhile, Lucy, having looked through all the photos, began to wilt. Lucas, she said apologetically, Lucas, don't be mad at me, it happened by accident. Were you unconscious? Lucas asked sarcastically, suppressing the rising anger. No, of course not. It's just, you're always busy with your work. And a woman, you understand, she really wants to be admired, to receive attention. I didn't love him, not one bit. He just happened to be in the right place at the right time. They usually say, the devil made me do it. He was attentive, sensitive, and deeply in debt. I gave him my card then because I didn't have cash. He promised to return it when he paid off his debts, but then his wallet was stolen. Lucy was now sniffling deeply, gradually realizing the enormity of her foolishness and the potential consequences. "Lucas, you'll forgive me, won't you? Please, say you'll forgive me. I'll never do anything so stupid again, never. You're the only one who really matters to me." Her husband's response was chillingly detached. "Don't strain yourself, it's too late for that," he said, his voice devoid of warmth. "You know, I broke a water pitcher in the office the other day. Smashed to pieces. Want to try and glue it back together without any trace. If you can manage that, I'll forgive you." Lucy's eyes began to well up like the world's most famous waterfalls. "You're so cruel, Lucas," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We're such a beautiful couple, together for so many years. Mistakes happen between spouses, people aren't perfect." Lucas's gaze hardened, his face a mask of indifference. "Yes, mistakes happen," he conceded. "But not all couples stay together afterward. You should move in with your parents tomorrow. I'll file for divorce myself. The lawyer will handle the formalities. From now on, we'll communicate through him. I sincerely hope never to see you again. At worst, at court if necessary." With these words, he stood up, signaling the end of the conversation, and trudged heavily up the stairs. The house sank into a gloomy silence, broken only by Lucy's bitter sobs. Meanwhile, Eloise was engrossed in watering the lawn around the office, mesmerized by the tiny rainbows forming in the thousands of flying droplets. The work was a pleasure. The water provided a refreshing coolness in the unbearable heat, and the unfriendly office staff were confined within the building's walls. She, Eloise, was here, alone with the sparkling rainbows, the green grass, and her thoughts. She carefully watered a fragrant flower bed of colourful petunias and noticed a boy sitting on a bench near the office, languid from the heat. His somewhat neglected but fiercely independent appearance reminded Eloise of Gavroche from Victor Hugo's beloved novel. Unable to resist, she directed a thin stream of cold water at the uninvited guest and laughed when the boy jumped up in surprise, shaking off his drowsiness. "Why are you splashing water?" he yelled, waving his arms and looking like an angry sparrow. "You looked hot," Eloise smiled, sitting down beside him to take a break. "Why are you out walking in such heat? Or is it even hotter at home?" "Hotter," the boy grumbled, puffing up and again resembling a sparrow. "My stepdad's home. With him, it's either scorching in the heat or freezing in the cold," he added ambiguously. "Does he hurt you?" Eloise asked sympathetically, her heart going out to the boy. The boy's face was a mix of defiance and sadness as he recounted his story to Eloise. "He doesn't hit me, but he's afraid of child protection services. He has nowhere else to live," the boy explained with a maturity beyond his years. "Otherwise, he doesn't need me at all. I just get in the way of him wooing rich women. He serenades them like a nightingale, but for me, he doesn't even have a name, just kid or brat, but for the ladies, he's full of sweethearts, darlings and kittens, a zoo." Eloise's heart ached for the boy. "What does he do for work?" she asked, genuinely concerned. "Work? Him," the boy scoffed, his indignation clear. "He lives off the sweethearts and darlings. It's disgusting to even eat the meals bought with their money," he burst out, releasing long-held bitterness. "And that. He gave me a cuff when I mimicked him kitty, but I got my revenge. I stole his wallet with the kitty's money and threw it into that trash can over there." Eloise's eyes widened in surprise, both at the boy's courage and his cleverness. "You must be very brave to stand up to him like that," she said, impressed. He shrugged, kicking the sand near the bench. He was thrown out. Now he walks around angry, and I try to stay home less often, sighing from the spoken worries. The little avenger began to dig the sand near the bench with his foot, clearly not regretting what he had done. "You know what," Eloise said, her mind working quickly. "Come with me. I think your story could be very useful to someone. And who knows, maybe he can help you too." With these words, they held hands and headed straight to the director's office. The director, Lucas, had been grumpy and uncommunicative lately. "Who is this?" Eloise, he asked, looking up from his paperwork. "Another discovery." "It seems to be the same one," Eloise replied gently. "Please talk to him. He will explain everything. I have a lot of work to do." Pushing the boy towards the director's desk, Eloise cautiously slipped out the door, leaving them alone. Lucas looked thoughtfully at the small visitor, almost swallowed by the large leather chair. "So what is your name?" he asked. "Tell me your story. Eloise has intrigued me." "My name is Harry." The boy introduced himself confidently and repeated the story of the discarded wallet in great detail. Lucas listened intently, his face growing more serious with each word. The boy's fate was unfortunate, and the thought of him living with such a scoundrel made Lucas's temples throb unpleasantly. "And where is your mother?" the director asked, breaking the silence. "She died a year ago," Harry responded, suddenly looking very sad. "It was pneumonia. Everyone gets treated, but they can't save her." Lucas's heart softened at the boy's obvious pain. "I'm very sorry to hear that, Harry. Life hasn't been fair to you, has it?" Harry shrugged again, his small shoulders bearing too much weight for someone his age. "It's just how it is," he said quietly. "I just want to be somewhere where I'm not in the way." Lucas leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. He knew he had to do something to help this brave little boy. "Harry," he said finally, "I think we can figure something out. How about you stay here for a while? We'll find a way to make things better for you." Harry's eyes widened in surprise. "You really mean it? I can stay here?" Lucas smiled, the first genuine smile he had managed in days. "Yes, Harry, we'll make sure you have a place where you belong." As Harry's face lit up with hope for the first time in a long while, Lucas felt a surge of determination. He would do whatever it took to help this boy. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The walk home was exceptionally difficult for Lucas that day. He couldn't stop thinking about the daring yet vulnerable Harry. His mother had died, his stepfather was a scoundrel and a swindler, yet the boy had such potential. Lucas loved children. He would have had a whole bunch by now if Lucy hadn't been so self-absorbed, obsessed with her appearance and eternal youth. Moving her from that bastion of self-centeredness had proven impossible. Perhaps she was simply incapable of caring for anyone but herself. "Yes, my beloved wife didn't even want a pocket dog, and here I was, hoping for something more." Lucas lamented with annoyance and suddenly thought, "Harry and I are both suffering because of this pair. But unlike me, he can't free himself from them." A simple and clear solution to the problem struck him suddenly and overwhelmingly, instantly lifting the heavy weight of unprocessed grief from his soul. His phone vibrated demandingly in the front seat. Lucas answered. "Boris? How are our divorce proceedings going?" "That's good to hear." "Boris, could you also handle another matter for me?" "No, not a wedding or a prenuptial agreement. I've had enough of those. Can you help me with an adoption? A boy, about 8 years old." "No. There won't be any issues with the parents. The father is gone, the mother has passed away, and the stepfather is a social outcast who would sell his soul and the boy for a place to stay." "Thank you, Boris. I knew you wouldn't refuse me." That night, unlike many before, Lucas slept the sleep of the righteous, dreaming of bright and bittersweet memories of his own childhood. Eloise stayed at work later than usual. Half the day was spent accompanying her mother to doctors and running around pharmacies, and there was no extra cleaner in the office. Sitting in her storage room and preparing the equipment, she suddenly heard muffled voices arguing heatedly in whispers. "Are you crazy? This is a criminal offense. Do you want me to go to jail?" a male voice protested indignantly. "Oh, sweetie, you want to stay clean? What about the robbery charge you already have? Who has a record that prevents them from getting any job? You, dear. Who kept quiet about your record when you joined the company? Me, dear, me. Who covers your drug deals and withdrawals? Again, me. And you still have the nerve to twist things around instead of following orders," the female voice hissed venomously. "Oh, you snake, covering for me. You'd only cover for me if I didn't pay you off from those very deals. Do you keep quiet for free? Now you want more? Trying to set me up? You're not taking any risks." "I risk just as much as you do. Who did the director's wife turn to?" "Me. Who will they settle scores with if something goes wrong?" "Me too. All you have to do is go to the intersection at Dubrava in pitch darkness and pour a can of oil on the road. He always takes that turn but likes to show off. Pour it, leave, and let fate handle the rest. You'll get paid for the job. Enough for your drugs and your girls. Refuse and I'll hand your file to the director tomorrow. I'll even earn a bonus for vigilance." Women are real witches, let me tell you. One wants to inherit her husband's money, afraid it might slip away, the other wants to profit from it. How much do you need? No husband, no kids, no elderly parents. You don't even spend on drugs. Won't you burst? Don't count my money. It's none of your business. If you don't agree, I'll report you to the director and the police. You'll go down for distribution. Eloise's heart pounded in her chest as she realized the gravity of what she had overheard. She knew she had to act, but she needed to be cautious. Quietly, she slipped out of the storage room and headed towards Lucas's office. She knocked softly and waited for his response. "Come in," Lucas's voice called out. Eloise entered, her face pale and serious. "Lucas, there's something you need to know. I overheard something. Something dangerous." Lucas looked up, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern as he listened to Eloise recount the conversation she had overheard. His face darkened with each word. "This is serious," he said, standing up and pacing the room. "We need to handle this carefully. If what you heard is true, my life could be in danger." Eloise nodded, her mind racing. "We need to gather evidence. We can't just accuse them without proof." Lucas stopped pacing and looked at her, a determined glint in his eyes. "You're right. We'll need to be smart about this. I'll contact someone I trust in the police force. Meanwhile, keep your eyes and ears open, but be careful. If they suspect anything, it could be dangerous for you too." Eloise agreed, and they formulated a plan. She would continue her work as usual, keeping an ear out for any more incriminating conversations. Lucas would discreetly gather evidence and contact his trusted friend in the police force. As Eloise left the office, she couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled in her stomach. The stakes were high, and the danger was real. But she knew she had to see this through, for Lucas's sake and for Harry, who deserved a better future. The male voice swore harshly and elaborately, followed by the loud slam of a door. Eloise sat frozen with fear. She knew those voices well. The male voice belonged to the perpetually grumpy and unsociable security guard who had arrived at the office after her and never engaged with anyone. The female voice. There was no mistake. It was the head of the HR department, Eloise's constant and unchanging tormentor. Her hands trembled, her thoughts tangled. Inside her, everything mixed fear for herself, for Lucas, the inability to comprehend the depth of human wickedness, and the horror that this wickedness was so close and disguised in bright colours. She had to run, do something and somehow warn the director. But where to run? If she moved, the conspirators would immediately know there was a witness. It was hard to say how long Eloise sat there, holding her breath and trying not to move. Time seemed to stop, trying to absorb what was happening. Finally, the key turned in the HR office door, and familiar high heels clicked down the stairs. Eloise knew that sound by heart. It never boded well, and now, even less so. Eloise took a deep breath and began to think about how she could warn the director of the impending danger. There was no time to waste. They might not wait until the next evening to pour the cursed oil. They could do it in the morning. Suddenly, an idea struck her. Quickly closing the door to the storage room, Eloise quietly crept into the director's office. The great privilege of being a cleaner is having keys to all the offices, she thought bitterly. She just hoped there were still some business cards in the holder. Luckily, there were a few left. With trembling hands, Eloise took a card and dialed the director's number. "Lucas, it's Eloise. Please don't hang up. I just overheard something. They're planning an accident for you. They're going to pour oil on the turn near Dubrava. They mentioned your wife. It seems she needs it." "Who?" "Oh, I can't say more." Eloise ended the call abruptly as she heard measured footsteps in the corridor. She quickly hid under the massive office desk, pushing a chair close for extra cover. The security guard was leisurely patrolling the office. When he reached the reception area and found the door open, he entered the office and turned on the light. Eloise felt as though she had already died. Her heart was pounding so loudly that it seemed impossible the guard wouldn't hear it. But after a cursory glance around the room and finding nothing suspicious, the guard turned off the light and left, locking the door behind him. Eloise lay down on the soft carpet to calm herself. How was she going to get out of the office now? The guard at the front desk was her enemy. She could possibly sleep in the storage room, but she had to warn her mother. Her mother shouldn't worry. A night of her daughter's absence could lead to anything. She needed to call her and make up something about an urgent, non-routine assignment that required her to stay overnight. Maybe her mother would believe it. Her mother's phone didn't answer. "The subscriber is out of the service area," the cheerful voice of the answering machine kept repeating. She didn't charge it again, Eloise thought with despair. This happened often with her mother. She never got used to the fact that, unlike the hardy button phones, a smartphone needed daily charging and often forgot to plug it in on time. Eloise needed to get home urgently. If she couldn't go out the doors, she'd have to climb out the window. Luckily, there was a fire escape near the director's window. If she could cross the lawn unnoticed, her slim figure could slip through the narrow gap in the iron fence, and this nightmare would be over. Reaching the fire escape wasn't too difficult, thanks to the sturdy wild grapevines entwining the wall. Trying not to make any noise, she descended the ladder and ran across the lawn towards the fence. Just as she was squeezing through the gap and feeling relieved to be free, Eloise suddenly felt someone's heavy gaze on her. She turned sharply and saw the security guard on the path, grimly and intently watching her. Obeying her instinct for self-preservation, Eloise sprinted towards the bus stop. He figured it out. He knows the desperate thought pounded in her mind, the heavy gaze replaying before her eyes, resembling an iron knuckle duster. "He'll kill me now." Her heart pounded like a trapped bird, and the absence of pursuit only increased her fear. But for some reason there was no chase. "There are cameras everywhere, he can't do it here," she thought. The last bus emerged from the darkness just in time. Eloise rushed through the open door and collapsed onto a seat, trying to catch her breath. What would happen now? She had no proof, and the overheard conversation could easily be dismissed as slander. They might postpone the accident for now, but only for now. And what would they do with a witness? Detective novels she had read offered no comforting scenarios for accidental witnesses. Catching her breath, but unable to think of a plan, Eloise walked down the dark alley towards her home. The lights were on in her apartment. Her mother was worried. And suddenly, upon hearing her mother's desperate cry, "My daughter," Eloise jerked, and something heavy struck her from behind, plunging her into darkness. The darkness slowly receded. Through its thick cover, distant voices could be heard. One was anxious, the other professionally calm. "Boris, you understand, it's because of me the girl got hurt." Thankfully, her mother called out, and the blow was glancing. "She saved my life, and now she lies there unconscious." "Lucas, calm down, dear. It's just a mild concussion. She's young, she'll recover. Her hair is thick, the scar won't show. Be grateful she stayed in that storage room that evening. Otherwise, you wouldn't have realized who you were divorcing or working with. Oil on the road, you know, is a nasty thing. It doesn't matter if Anushka or that scoundrel pours it. Now, everything hidden has come to light, making the divorce and the cleanup of criminal employees much easier. You're a cynic, Boris. An incorrigible cynic. It's a professional defamation, dear. Otherwise, I'd have gone mad long ago. Oh, our fairy seems to be waking up. I told you she'd be fine." Through the dissipating darkness, two faces emerged, Lucas's very pale one and the ironically kind face of an unfamiliar elderly man. Eloise tried to smile weakly and joke. "I seem to have survived after all." But then another face appeared, thin and stern in a doctor's cap. "It'll heal before the wedding," it declared reassuringly and decisively, instantly clearing all visitors from Eloise's room. In the morning, Eloise's mother was allowed in. She tried to stay calm, though it was difficult. "How do you feel, dear? Does your head hurt badly?" "It's okay, Mum. I'm feeling better. My head just feels a bit dizzy and rings a little." "How are you?" "You shouldn't be worrying," Eloise asked, her voice weak but filled with concern. "I'm almost not worrying anymore. The doctors are reassuring, saying you'll be fine. That night I was nearly scared to death, but God was merciful and strengthened me." Your attacker didn't even manage to escape. The guys from the first floor rushed out when they heard my scream and caught him. So, don't worry about anything. Just rest and get better. I'll handle everything now," her mother said, her voice steady but laced with lingering fear. "Mum, how can I just lie here? All my salary went to medicine. How are you living right now?" Eloise asked, guilt creeping into her tone. "My dear, don't worry about that at all. Lucas is a wonderful man. He assured me that we wouldn't be in need and has kept his word. You just focus on getting better and sleeping a lot," her mother gently stroked Eloise's hair peeking out from under the bandage. Meanwhile, in another room. "Lucas, can you talk?" Boris's usually calm voice sounded concerned. "Yes, of course. Is there something unexpected?" Lucas, familiar with his lawyer, grew wary. Such notes were unusual for the experienced attorney. "Unexpected?" "Very much so. In fact, quite extraordinary." Boris had clearly lost his composure. "Don't keep me in suspense. Explain it already." Lucas's patience was wearing thin. "Explain?" "It's perhaps you, my dear Lucas, who should explain something to me, this old fool. Do you know who the father of the boy you're planning to adopt is?" Boris's voice was steady, but his words hung heavily in the air. "Heavens, Boris, how would I know? I've only seen the stepfather in photos. Who is his father?" Lucas's heart pounded with an uneasy suspicion. "It's not by chance that I came to you for a sample for testing. You are, with a 99.9% probability, the biological father of Harry," Boris stated calmly, while Lucas felt the ground slip from under his feet. "Lord, how? Wait, who is his mother?" Lucas stammered, barely able to process the information. "Anya," came the calm reply from the other end of the line. "Does that name mean anything to you?" "Of course it does," Lucas replied emptily. Anya, the cheerful, mischievous, carefree girl, a college love with no serious commitments. He had left for his assignment back then, and she had no intention of leaving her hometown. Deep down, Lucas sometimes even envied her boundless zest for life. He couldn't live like that. He was too serious to be completely carefree about the future. Why didn't she tell him she was pregnant? Why hadn't she contacted him all these years? Though Anya's live-for-today philosophy never fit into conventional logic. Boris continued. "She raised him alone, Lucas. Never asked for anything. Now she's gone, and Harry is left with a stepfather who doesn't want him. It's a miracle you decided to adopt him." Lucas sighed, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say, Boris. This changes everything." "Take it one step at a time. You've always been good at that," Boris advised. "And remember, you're not alone in this." Lucas paced the room, his thoughts in turmoil. "So this heartbreaker has ensnared another woman," he muttered to himself, the almost subdued desire to strangle the scoundrel surging anew. What was it about him that attracted women so much? Why did they have this idiotic attraction to depraved characters? Lucas regretted quitting smoking. It would have helped right now. Harry entered the room, and Lucas steeled himself. How would he take this incredible news? Harry listened to the confused story from his newly found father with surprising calm. Their shared hatred towards their stepfather had bonded him with Lucas, pushing aside all possible grievances and complaints. After a moment, Harry sniffled, scratched his tousled head, and philosophically declared, "They say everything happens for the best. We went through a lot, but now I have a real father, and he glanced at Lucas from under his brow. You have a real son." Lucas couldn't comment on this. He simply approached the boy and gently pressed his unruly head to his chest. Harry, under his hand, nudged slightly like a frisky calf and then froze, pressing his thin body against his father. They stood in silence, saying nothing to each other, each understanding that this silence spoke far more eloquently than any words. Eloise entered the office, shaking off the drops of lingering September rain from her jacket. The director was already waiting for her. "Good morning, Eloise. Glad to see you back. How's your health?" Eloise nodded affirmatively, trying not to smile too broadly. "Much better, thank you." "That's wonderful. We just had a manager leave. Would you be interested in an internship in the marketing department?" The director's formal tone couldn't hide the joyful sparkles in his eyes. "Are you ready?" "Ready," Eloise responded cheerfully. Unable to maintain the office formality, she exclaimed warmly, "And how's Harry?" Harry, the director's sparkles burst into a beam of sunlight. "Harry often asks about you, Eloise. He evidently misses the involucrating stream from the watering hose." Harry fidgeted impatiently in the sparkling clean hall of the medical centre. "How long are they going to take?" "I can't wait any longer," he grumbled, waiting for Lucas and Eloise. The visit was important because it would determine if Harry would soon have a brother or a sister. A brother would be great, but he would be very small. You couldn't race him on a bike or climb a tree with him. No, he would grow up eventually, but by then Harry would no longer need it. But a sister, that was a completely different story. She would always need protection and care. Girls, after all, are often clueless. They can't always stand up for themselves, and it's easy to confuse them. Harry would be her protector and authority, not just for a while, but for life. The doors of the closed office suddenly swung open, releasing a joyful Lucas and Eloise into the hall. "Well, what do you have to say?" Harry asked sternly, tired of waiting. "Harry, do you know how to tie ribbons?" Eloise, sparkling with happiness, asked cheerfully. "I'll learn," Harry replied with a satisfied smile, mentally noting, "Good job, parents, you didn't let me down."